accustomed to seeing vampires who are handsome guys and beautiful women. Have you ever seen an old vampire man? He roars at the intruders and spits saliva all over the old lady's face. The old vampire man, despite his old age, works hard. He takes care of the entire reconstituted family, pulling them together. Every day, he follows behind the children, tidying up after them. He hasn't been this angry in a long time. Landon is a model citizen. He always flies over the dirty areas so as not to step on the janitor's clean floors. Landon takes care of 3 children. First is the only female, Anna. Decades ago, she was a Soviet soldier. In a mission to protect the old man, she got shot. Unable to bear seeing her die, Landon cuts his arm and feeds her his blood, turning her into a vampire. Anna later became a policewoman and has been active in frontline cases. Anna's talent is mind reading, which she can't do through physical contact. Next is the eldest brother in the family, York. He used to be a field doctor. When Landon mistakenly killed York while committing a murder, he had no choice but to turn him into a vampire as well. York still works as a doctor, practicing his old profession. His talent is that with just a sip of someone's blood, he can discern their blood type and physical condition. The youngest child in the family, Eric, is a university student who hasn't awakened any talents yet. Just a few days ago, Eric got into big trouble. After getting drunk, he followed 3 people into a car, and they took him to a small grove. Although Eric hasn't awakened any talents, dealing with a few ordinary people is still easy for him. Vampires don't easily kill people. He drew a bottle of blood from each of the 3 individuals and left effortlessly. The next day, Anna received a report at the station and discovered 2 bodies in the grove. Their bodies had been drained of blood in a bizarre manner. Due to the unusual nature of the crime scene, the higher-ups attached great importance to the case and assigned Ivan from the Special Crime Investigation Bureau to participate. Anna found Eric's belongings at the scene, and she confronted her brother at home, shoving a gun into his mouth, questioning whether he had killed those people. Eric swore that he only drew a bottle of blood from each person, and when he left, all 3 humans were still breathing. That's when Anna realized that there were 3 people last night. Anna and Landon were very concerned. Once vampires are involved in a murder case, it could attract the guardians responsible for their management. Just as Anna finished speaking, the guardians showed up at their door. Landon assured them that his family strictly adheres to the treaty and has not harmed any humans. The guardians gave Landon some time to find the real culprit, otherwise they would have to hand over Eric for punishment. Elder brother York arrived home, carrying a large bag of blood bags from the hospital. He opened the refrigerator and was relieved to see a bottle of blood. He exclaimed that the family finally had someone who could earn a living. York took a big sip from the blood bag Eric had saved and was surprised to find that the taste was familiar. It was the blood of the patient he operated on in the morning. Landon told York about the incident in the morning, and that patient turned out to be a crucial eyewitness. York took his sister and went to find the 3rd person, but the person had already left. The only exit was through the back window. Anna instinctively climbed up, ready to jump down, but then she remembered Ivan was also there. She awkwardly climbed back down the stairs. After Anna and the other left, York immediately contacted his vampire ex-wife, Jane, suspecting that she might be the one behind the killings. The identity of the survivor had been confirmed. It turned out that the student was Jane's. Furthermore, his ex-wife hadn't asked him for blood in a month, which seemed suspicious. Jane stated that on the day of the crime, she was on a date with her boyfriend, and if she had really committed the murders, York would have been her first target. With no leads in the case, Anna felt that Ivan was hiding important information. She planned to investigate his computer, but she needed Landon's help. Anna knew that Ivan had feelings for her, so she invited him out for dinner. While they were on the date, Anna intentionally or unintentionally made physical contact with him, hoping to gather some information through telepathy. Ivan thought this was a signal of interest from Anna, so he invited her to his place for the night. Anna immediately refused, but the problem was that Landon hadn't finished his task yet. She came to Ivan's house, calling out loudly to alert Landon. Landon jumped out of the window and plunged to the ground. Concerned passersby asked, and Landon replied that he wasn't planning to die yet. Meanwhile, Ivan discovered that his computer had been tampered with, and he had a secret program that could trace the address of the person who stole the information. Furthermore, Eric, who manipulated at home, was likely to be exposed. Ivan called for action, and they arrived at the bar downstairs Landon's apartment. 2 drunk men noticed Anna's interference and started harassing her. Ivan knocked one of them down with a punch, but got hit with a bottle himself. Anna came over and knocked out the other drunk man, then took the injured Ivan back home for treatment. After all, for the first time in 70 years, she had encountered a man who protected her. Just then, the guardian arrived, thinking that Landon and his family were dining. Impatient, she wanted to capture Eric, which led to the initial confrontation. Landon transformed to protect his family, and managed to secure a week's time. However, he was getting old, and after transforming, he couldn't retract his wings anymore. The next day, Anna found a witness named Mac, who often hid in the garage for band rehearsals. She immediately rushed to the scene, but to her shock, she saw Ivan crouching next to a corpse, revealing his shark fangs. Just as Anna was stunned, he removed the false teeth from his mouth. It turned out, Ivan was merely recreating the crime scene, and there lay the body of Mac on the ground, with the canine teeth marks on his arm. Ivan speculated that there was a fourth person in the woods. Anna rushed forward to bite the person unconscious, and when Ivan woke up, he had no memory of it. Mac's body had already been cleaned up. Anna took it to York's hospital and asked him to hide the body for now. Landon caught sight of it, and he decided to find the culprit using the simplest method. So he went to find the suspect Jane and asked her to undergo an examination by York. Because medical technology was advanced nowadays, it was possible to determine whose blood a vampire had consumed. Jane, in order to prove her innocence, had no choice but to undergo the examination. The old man hung his feet in the air, hiding behind the curtain and eavesdropping. After York's examination, Jane was cleared of suspicion. York went to study the body that his sister had brought, and he was astonished to discover that it wasn't Mac at all. The case became even more chaotic, and Eric was completely unfazed. He was at home exploring his regenerative abilities, slashing his wrist and witnessing the wound healing rapidly. He even hanged himself on the spot, scaring Ivan nearly to death when he came to visit. Anna was getting fed up with her brother, so she took the opportunity while Ivan wasn't paying attention to give him a good beating. Due to excessive loss of blood from testing his regenerative abilities and the lack of stored blood at home, he boarded a crowded bus where people were packed tightly and emitting tempting aromas. Eric approached a male passenger, but was promptly kicked out of the compartment. He was now extremely weak, and on the way, he encountered troublemakers, who knocked him unconscious with a kick. In the end, it was Landon who came to the rescue and brought him back home. Meanwhile, Anna prepared to investigate Mac's house, but encountered heavy traffic on the way. Finally, Ivan shared some information with her. It turned out, similar cases of bloodless corpses were not isolated incidents, and there were similar gruesome cases in Moscow as well. Anna looked at the computer data, and she discovered a familiar button. She immediately took out her phone and took a photo. When Anna arrived at Mac's house, she saw a banned poster dated March 2nd, and it turned out that when the deaths occurred in Moscow, Mac was also on a tour in that city. She went home and showed the button to Landon and the others, and York quickly recognized it as something belonging to his ex-wife. The group immediately went to confront Jane, but she claimed that the button had been donated to a museum long ago. Just as the situation reached a stalemate, Mac suddenly emerged naked, revealing that he was Jane's lover. York noticed that all of his wounds had healed, and he took a vial of blood from Mac and sealed it. At that moment, Ivan arrived. It turned out he had traced the location through Mac's call records. The police took Mac to the station for interrogation, but due to being bitten by Eric, he couldn't remember the face of the person or being bitten. Mac only knew that when he woke up, his companion was already dead, and a person in black was crouching next to the body. He quickly ran to the car and drove away, but he fainted as soon as he reached the town. When he woke up, he found himself in York's hospital, and the person in black chased after him. He jumped out of the window to escape, and ran back to the garage, where his roommate was mistaken for the person in black. As Mac became the scapegoat, he had no idea why his wounds were healing. On the other side, York immediately tasted his blood upon returning home, and found it to be peculiar. He asked the assistant to send the blood for chemical analysis. Shortly after, York received a call from Anna, asking him to quickly dispose of his roommate's body. After much distress, York sought help from his ex-wife, as she had the talent to manipulate people's minds. She hypnotized the staff, and successfully allowed York to take the body away. The two of them brought it to a secluded location, and on the way, York speculated that Mac's ability to heal himself might be due to contact with his blood. Perhaps the blood of a vampire could be utilized to create a powerful drug that threw the garage body off a bridge, making it appear as an accident scene. On the other side, Landon took Eric out Intending to seek help from a friend to investigate the case, they passed by an empty room and accidentally discovered it was filled with specimens with vampire photos on the walls. Landon immediately contacted Anna, who hurried to the scene with Ivan. They broke open the door and entered the room, finding clues about vampires all over the walls. There was even a photo of Landon. Anna quietly took it down and hid it. Ivan noticed intravenous tubes in the cabinet, which might be related to the blood extraction marks on the bodies. Suddenly, a beam of light shone from outside the window, indicating the return of the homeowner. A seemingly ordinary grandfather-grandson pair. The grandson explained that his grandfather had a strong interest in studying vampires, and the intravenous tubes were merely for the grandfather's medical treatment. The grandfather became excited upon hearing this, claiming that he had seen vampires when he was young, but no one believed him. Suddenly, the grandfather shouted the name of his deceased wife, followed by speaking incoherently. Ivan realized that the grandfather had a mental issue. After Anna returned home, she informed Landon about the situation in the cabin, and he confirmed that he had indeed seen the crazy grandfather before. He immediately went to find the guardian, who was responsible for placing the grandfather in a psychiatric hospital, resulting in his mental instability. Landon felt that the guardian's handling was too rough, and there must be other ways to protect the vampires without exposing them. Irina didn't take it seriously and changed the subject. She proposed sparing Eric from involvement in the murder case, on the condition that Landon would turn her into a vampire. Of course, Landon refused. If the guardian became a vampire, it would create an imbalance of power between the two sides. Only humans can impartially enforce the treaty. Years ago, Landon made a mistake. He converted the brother of a certain guardian, resulting in the brother massacring an entire village. The guardian also covered up the incident and hid this murder case. Irina stated that she would pass her position to her son and no longer interface in vampire affairs. Furthermore, she had a tumor in her brain, and if she didn't undergo transformation, she would die. The old man didn't know what to decide, but in the following days, Irina kept pestering him for an answer. Landon had no choice but to confess that Yerk was researching a new drug that had the potential to cure cancer. Irina could only give him another chance. On the other side, the grandson of the crazy old man brought the collected information from the old man to Ivan, and surprisingly, Eric's photo was among them. Ivan went to talk to Eric about it, and Eric explained that it was a net graph for his YouTube channel, just a gimmick using vampires. He even gave Ivan a ticket to a costume party. That night, in a video message, Eric discovered a strange account named Dark God. He immediately contacted Anna and Ivan. As this account knew about Max's escape from the hospital, Ivan took over the computer, released the news about a vampire-themed costume party, and announced on the platform that the Dark God was invited. Mac will be pressed, ready to lure out the mysterious person. Eric takes the stage for a raffle, intentionally announcing that the Dark God has won. Just when Anna is getting anxious, she accidentally sees Landon and Yerk as well. They came to buy contraband because Mac's blood test results showed traces of prohibited substances. Yerk wants to identify which one would cause a reaction between human and vampire blood, leading to enhanced healing abilities. Right after the transaction was completed, the police arrested them. Eric takes the stage again and grandly introduces Mac, hoping he would recount the events and lure out the Dark God. The suspect didn't emerge, and Mac's mental state worsens. He starts mistaking everyone in their room for vampires. Then the police appear again and arrest Landon, who was trying to escape. The people in the bar panic and scatter. Eric sees Mac being pushed out of the crowd and hurriedly chases after him, only to find him stabbed in the chest. Fortunately, Mac didn't die, or else this would never end. Now, except for Anna, the whole family is detained by the police. The dismembered body of their roommate was discovered, and there was a driving recorder in the truck that hit the body, capturing footage of two individuals threw the body off a bridge. Thankfully, Yerk and Jane's faces weren't clear in the footage. The vampire family is currently trying to find a way to leave the police station. Yerk initially wanted to pry open the iron door directly, but with all the surveillance, he is afraid of exposure, so he has to give up. Anna rushes over in a hurry and says the police suspect Eric of attacking Mac and want to take him for a blood test. The situation is extremely critical, and Anna couldn't help but blame Landon for turning Eric into such a fool. In fact, it was just an accident. Landon had an argument with the driver while in the car, and as a result, they collided with Eric. Landon was thrown out and landed on top of Eric, and the blood flowing from his ear ended up in Eric's mouth. Landon wasn't aware of this incident, so he got up and was about to leave when he noticed Eric standing up. He couldn't just leave the guy behind. He quietly followed him upstairs. Eric returned to the dormitory, and his roommate was worried when he saw his face covered in blood. Eric explained that he had just been in a car accident and didn't think much of it. That evening, he went on a date with his girlfriend as usual, and he noticed that his senses had become unusually sharp. Not only could he smell scents from dozens of meters away, but he could also distinguish the formula of his girlfriend's perfume. The two of them were kissing on a busy street when he couldn't resist biting her lip, which angered the girl and made her leave in a huff. That's when Landon appeared and took him back to his own home, helping Eric learn everything about being a vampire. For instance, vampires are not afraid of sunlight, and they don't kill people by draining them completely. At first, Eric didn't believe Landon, so he left the apartment. He was amazed by his newfound heightened senses, such as being able to hear the music playing in strangers' headphones. Eric was too absorbed in this new experience and almost got hit by a car. He threw a punch and surprisingly dented the car's hood. Eric went to apologize to his girlfriend, but she had already found someone new. When the new boyfriend approached, he punched Eric. Eric noticed that his movements had become slow, and he effortlessly evaded the attacks. In the following days, he became increasingly thirsty for blood and even caught the attention of his roommate. He sought Landon's help and officially joined his family. Returning to the present, they can't stay locked up in the police station forever. In a critical moment, it's up to Landon to come up with a plan. During the interrogation, Landon pretended to be sick, and the authorities were afraid of causing a death. Being an old man in his 90s, he didn't look like a drug addict either. The authorities released both him and Jurk. Only Eric was taken away to have his blood drawn. The blood in his body was just drunk a few days ago. The doctor immediately noticed something was off. A 20-year-old young man, why does his blood resemble that of an 80-year-old? In a critical moment, Jane arrived. She hypnotized the doctor and switched the test tubes. Meanwhile, Ivan made a new discovery. Michelin, grandson of the grandpa who was insane, is not a student. He is interning at the local hospital. Michelin is fully capable of drawing blood from the deceased using an IV tube. However, the neighbors say they haven't seen him for many days. Anna and the others immediately sprang into action and headed to the hospital where Michelin works. She quickly identified a suspicious individual and hurriedly pursued, but Michelin triggered a fire alarm and escaped the hospital in the chaos. Anna's hand was scratched by glass, but vampires have strong regenerative abilities. To avoid suspicion, she intentionally covered it with a band-aid. Anna and Ivan arrived at the wooden cabin where the grandfather and grandson live. They wanted to find out if Grandpa knew Michelin's whereabouts. Suddenly, Ivan's walkie-talkie rang, exposing the news that Michelin is wanted. Grandpa had a heart attack out of anger. The two handed him over to their colleagues for emergency medical treatment. On their way back, they received news that the police found Michelin's car. They immediately rushed to the scene. In the car, they found a pair of brass knuckles with spikes, likely used to fake vampire bite marks. They returned to the police station to report. The fingerprints found in the car matched the tool used to stab Mac. Michelin can be confirmed as the prime suspect. Meanwhile, Jurk developed a preliminary drug, but he only had 2 doses on hand. He decided to try it on the unconscious Mac first, and it indeed helped to stabilize Mac's heart rate. Jurk dreamed of the Nobel Prize in medicine and felt victory was within reach. He immediately informed Landon to contact the Guardian for a trial. Unexpectedly, in less than a few hours, Mac's condition suddenly deteriorated. Jurk had to contact Landon again to cancel the arrangement. To his surprise, he learned that the assistant had performed blood dialysis on Mac, and all the drugs were removed. Although there was still 1 dose left, Jurk had to save it for the Guardian. Meanwhile, Landon didn't know how to bring up the cancellation and was trying to change the subject. Just as the situation was about to explode, Jurk's timely phone call arrived. He said the drug was fine and they could go to the hospital. Landon thought everything was going well, but he happened to see the crazy grandpa having a heart attack. He felt guilty about this person. If it weren't for revealing his vampire identity, the old man wouldn't have been taken as a lunatic. Landon wanted Jurk to save him and used up the last dose of the drug. Irina was very angry after finding out. Landon promised the other party that he would definitely accelerate the research progress. On the other side, Ivan finally managed to have a meal, but he discovered that Michelin was standing nearby. He immediately threw away the food and chased after him. Unexpectedly, he fell into the opponent's ambush. He was tied up by Michelin on the rooftop. Anna instructed the other police officers to divert their attention. She quietly went upstairs. At the moment she entered the rooftop, Michelin pushed Ivan down. In Anna's desperate moment, using her flash ability, she quickly grabbed Ivan, and she pulled Michelin down to the ground as well. Now the real culprit is caught, and Eric is released by the police. Anna also realizes that she has fallen in love with Ivan, and they spend the night together in the room. Anna accidentally reveals her identity, and Ivan asks her what's going on. Anna decides to be honest, and reveals her vampire identity, explaining that her entire family is of the same kind. Nevertheless, vampires have an agreement with guardians who help them conceal their identities, and in return, vampires promise not to harm humans. Ivan asks her how long she has been a vampire, and Anna honestly answers 74 years. Ivan is shocked, realizing that with the time she spent as a human, Anna is older than his own mother. The next day, the police begin to interrogate Michelin, and he claims to be a vampire. It turns out that Michelin was influenced by his grandfather and started drinking animal blood at the age of 12. As he grew up, he worked hard in hospitals with the intention of drinking human blood. Michelin continues to confess, admitting that he was responsible for the Moscow murder case. He killed the victims with a wooden stick embedded with nails, leading to circular bite-like wounds. He also used an IV tube to drain the victim's blood for storage. At that moment, Irina arrives, and Anna takes the opportunity to tell her about the real culprit. To their surprise, Michelin reveals that during the forced murder incident, he encountered another vampire who was harming people. He took photos as evidence. The person in the computer is Eric. Irina already harbored grudges because of the drug incident. Now she insists on executing Eric. Anna is furious and rushes into the interrogation room to settle the score with Michelin. Coincidentally, he mentions the incident in the garage and confesses to mistakenly killing their roommate. Yet, Ivan didn't see a body in the garage as his memory was erased. He was about to inquire further when Anna changes the topic. She invites Ivan to the restaurant to explain everything that happened in the garage. On the other side, Landon hands Eric over to the Guardian and must witness the execution process. Eric is extremely saddened and roars at Landon, but to his surprise, Landon approaches him with an axe. In a moment of fear, Eric breaks free from the iron chains and jumps out of the window to escape. The Guardian warns Landon to immediately notify her if Eric returns home. The next day, Ivan discovers a new problem. Michelin also has bite marks on his neck. He quickly goes to find Landon's family and asks who bit Michelin. None of them admit to it. Landon takes out a vampire list and searches through it, but he can't find a match. On the other side, Eric, who is wandering outside, encounters a vampire named Max. Max brings Eric to his headquarters and tells him about the history between him and Landon. Max's wife committed murder and violated the tree. She was ordered by Landon to be executed. Max wanted to avenge his beloved wife, but he was also turned into a vampire by Landon. He couldn't possibly defeat him. He was severely injured by Landon and trapped under a boulder. After several centuries passed, the two people accidentally detected something under the stone. They dug out Max's corpse and the battle axe. They loaded the bones and the axe into a car. They planned to find an expert for an appraisal. Unexpectedly, they became a meal for Max. After drinking enough, he returned to his original state. He also found Michelin, who admired the bloodline of vampires, to help. It turned out that Max was the true culprit behind the recent murders. Michelin was just an accomplice. He wanted Max to turn him into a vampire. Eric felt furious about Landon's betrayal. He decided to join forces with Max. While this person was not trustworthy, he misled Eric into thinking that he had awakened special abilities, such as the ability to retrieve objects from a distance. Eric immediately went to seek revenge against Landon. He was about to act when Max grabbed him. Max reminded him that the Guardian was nearby and warned against acting recklessly. Eric revealed the Guardian's illness to Max. Max secretly went to find Irina. He promised her eternal life, but the condition was that she had to capture Landon's family. On Ivan's side, he figured out how to find the mysterious vampire. Ivan approached Michelin, deliberately showing the bite marks on his neck, claiming to be a servant of the vampires. Surprisingly, he actually fooled Michelin. He confessed everything Max had done, including instructing Michelin to falsely accuse Eric of the murders in the woods. After Ivan obtained the desired information, he lied and claimed that his master would come to meet him at 8 tonight. Meanwhile, Eric didn't give up. He went to Landon's building. The area was surrounded by the Guardian's informant. He had to find a way to distract them. Eric approached a passerby to borrow a phone. and called the police to report a thief in a blue car on Maple Street. It indeed diverted the attention of the Guardian's informant. Eric took the opportunity to knock on the door and enter the apartment. Landon embraced him. It turned out they had planned it together. Before reaching the execution site, Landon instructed Eric, "The iron chain used to bind people is old. You can't break free with enough effort. The so-called betrayal was just an act." Eric informed everyone that Max was the vampire responsible for the harm. Landon understood. His enemies had come knocking. Eric planned to return to Max's side and act as a double agent. Landon was very angry. He didn't want Eric to take risks, but Eric wanted to prove himself. He even brought a locator to help everyone locate Max. The current issue was how to get Eric out of the apartment. York brought out a suitcase, but Eric, being 6 feet tall, couldn't fit inside. Everyone lunged forward, breaking Eric's arms and legs. They were such a loving family. Finally, Jane performed leapfrog on the suitcase directly and successfully closed the zipper. Landon asked Eric to bear with it, as vampire fractures would heal. Then Jane casually hypnotized a passerby, instructing him to throw the suitcase near a trash bin. A homeless person saw the suitcase fell down by itself. A pair of hands emerged, and Eric crawled out, straightening his joints. The scene was very thrilling. Meanwhile, there was a new development at the police station. Vigilante believed that his master would come, and he decided to commit suicide at 8 o'clock, waiting for the transformation. Just as Iva finished interrogating him, the suspect committed suicide. The higher-ups decided to suspend and investigate him. Eric successfully returned to Max's side, taking the opportunity to send Landon the location. Everyone acted swiftly, calling the Guardian to the scene. Max saw the car downstairs. Realizing that Eric had betrayed him, he lifted Eric into the air from a distance, and Eric painfully fell to the ground. At the last moment, Eric unexpectedly awakened his powers, using telekinesis to place the locator in Max's pocket. Max quickly left the scene, while both parties downstairs searched around. The Guardian caught Eric, and without hesitation, she executed him. They even set his remains on fire. Anna and York bared their fangs. Landon shouted to calm the situation. Angered, he left the scene, suspecting collusion between the Guardian and Max. Ivan sensed the recent low atmosphere, and upon asking Anna, he learned that Eric had been executed. Landon couldn't swallow this injustice. He went to warn Irina that an evil vampire had awakened, and they needed to be more vigilant. Ivan angrily rushed in, accusing Irina of killing Eric. According to the law, she should go to jail, but she didn't care at all, as she didn't have many years left anyway. And Landon's disclosure of their vampire identities made matters worse. Everyone was concerned about the Guardian retaliating against Ivan, as anyone who knew about the existence of vampires would be eliminated by the organization. Their concerns were not unfounded, and soon Ivan was attacked by someone. Luckily, Jane was nearby, and she intervened in time to save Ivan. However, her excessive force resulted in the gruesome death of one of the organization's members. Despite York's arrival for first aid, he couldn't save the other person. Upon learning this, Landon erupted in anger, and now he wants to clean up the mess. He can only make a deal with Irina, and he found her again, claiming that the medication will be ready soon. If the organization lets Jane, who accidentally killed a human, go free, he will extend his help. Unexpectedly, Irina didn't agree, and Landon instinctively sensed something was wrong. In fact, just a few hours ago, Irina found Max and agreed to cooperate with him. Max was willing to convert Irina, with only one condition: to capture Landon's family. Thus, the Guardians organization had already betrayed them. Although Landon didn't know the details, he had an animalistic intuition. He urged the children to leave quickly to escape this disaster. Everyone was unwilling to abandon Landon, but the other side insisted on staying. Landon watched the children leave, staying alone in the room, reminiscing about each child's growth. Landon unintentionally saw Eric's phone. Realizing that the locator on it was still active, Landon followed the navigation to find Max, warning him to stay away from his family. But Max had already made arrangements with Irina, and Anna and the others had already been captured. Upon hearing this, Landon took off his hat. He transformed into his true form. But before he could attack, Max controlled the electrical wires and shot him, immediately followed by a kick to Landon's face. When he regained consciousness, he discovered that everyone was locked in an iron cage. With the Guardian and Max outside, they planned to kill his loved ones one by one, making Landon witness the death of his children as revenge for his deceased wife. Before the execution, Max accused Landon of being ignorant. Despite being of noble blood, yet willingly bound by treaties, which was a disgrace to the vampire identity. Landon remained unmoved after going through so much effort just to live as a human and not as a mere beast. Max would never understand. Irina realized for the first time the responsibility of her ancestors as guardians. They should not have helped Max do evil deeds. Irina commanded her subordinates to attack Max. While a few humans were no match for vampires, Max approached Irina and grabbed her son. At a critical moment, Ivan arrived and fired several shots at Max, but it was all in vain. Max knocked Ivan to the ground, then turned and picked up an axe. In a desperate moment, Irina rushed forward and pushed Max down the stairs. The vampire was impaled by steel bars, but in the next second, Max climbed back up. Muck, who was waiting downstairs for Ivan, saw the situation, drove his car towards Max, splattering blood on the car window. Just when everyone thought everything was fine, Max suddenly stood up straight, forcefully pushing the car away. Max stepped on the gas pedal, but it was futile. Ivan hit the car's fuel tank, and a massive explosion occurred. Max was engulfed in flames. Mac took the opportunity to crawl out of the car, and this farce finally came to an end. Ivan took the axe and walked over, chopping off Max's head. After passing her position to her son, Irina died. The vampire family could finally stay in their homeland, and as they raised their glasses to celebrate, Irina's son arrived at the scene with people accusing Jane of causing harm to ordinary humans and wanting to take her away for execution. York presented a hospital certificate stating that Jane was pregnant and couldn't be subjected to punishment. Little did they know, the guardians insisted on taking her away, leaving Landon utterly disappointed this time. He had followed the rules for thousands of years, only to receive such treatment in return. It was evident that peace wasn't the only choice. The story of this season comes to an end. A very interesting series, although it is labeled as mystery and fantasy. The story isn't overly complex. If you enjoy my channel, please give me a subscription.